The statement in question today is Ben Franklin was a good brother. For this part of our project, we're just examining the life of Ben Franklin through his relationships with his siblings. He was one of the 17 children of Jeremiah Franklin, one of the 10 that he had with Abiah Folger. So really, in a field of all the siblings, Ben Franklin was just one of the many. So there's only two really well-documented cases of Ben Franklin having relations with his siblings. The one was with his brother, James Franklin, and the one was with his sister, Jane Mecham, which is her married name. Both of them really show the different aspects of the relations that he had with them. The first one being James, which was explicitly mentioned in the autobiography. It tells of when Ben was first getting his job as an apprentice to his brother at his printing shop, which his dad suggested that he do. James really played a pivotal role in Ben's life. He gave him his first job and really introduced him to the career path he was going to follow for the rest of his life. So Ben was a good brother in that regard, that he accepted James's offer and he really thrived under his mentorship. He usually followed his rules, but from time to time he would break them. Like when James would not allow him to write for the paper, even though Ben really wanted to. Ben started writing under an alternate name and submitting articles to the paper without, just completely disregarding James's request. And when he found out, he got really upset with him, reprimanded him, and he would frequently beat Ben. So Ben couldn't have done anything about this. But despite the fact that Ben was under contract with them and was pretty useful to him, he still ended up quitting his job and leaving his brother behind. One of the examples of how he was a bad brother. Another thing is that with all the siblings that he had 15 other siblings, 10 of which were actually his full-on biological paternal and maternal siblings, 7 of which weren't. There's not a lot of records of him keeping in contact with them. There's not really a whole bunch of information, leading us to assume that he must not have contacted them as frequently as he did James and Jane. As a good brother, though, there's a lot more examples that outweigh the bad. First of all, even though James would beat Ben and treat him terribly, Ben still ended up going back to James in the end after he comes back from his ventures in Philadelphia when James is arrested for printing things in his newspaper the government didn't approve of. Ben ended up giving his son a job and caring for him, and they made amends in the end, so it all turned out okay. The other example of Ben being a good brother was with his sister, Jane Mecham. And Ben and Jane were two of the youngest siblings of the entire pack. I believe Jane was born second last and Ben was born third last. They grew up apart, or they grew up together, but they ended up growing apart, especially in an economic sense. Ben ended up being this amazingly successful politician, while Jane ended up staying at home, being very poor, caring for many children. But despite this fact, they kept in correspondence for 63 years, which is a pretty incredible amount of time, considering the fact that they rarely saw each other, especially with all that Ben was doing. They also were the last two surviving siblings of the entire Franklin clan, pack, whatever you want to call them. So they really valued each other's company, and it was said that Ben loved her the longest of anyone. Loved her the longest, not more than, but longer than his wife. She was one of the first people in his life and was one of the last people to leave.